Hi, this is Connor.
Rebecca.
And Carl.
From Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist podcast, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast coverage of Damnation. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Hey guys, it's Reilly here, artist of Marvel's Damnation comic book event. Welcome to the podcast crossover between Inner Demons, Sons of the Dragon, Defenders TV podcast, and Into the Night. Every issue reviewed, all tie-in books discussed. May all be damned.
Welcome to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. A podcast all about Moon Knight, where we're always on edge. Because welcome to the Life Raft, baby. We got Anubis sitting beside us, because this time, this podcast is being hosted by 4 people in the other void, or Overvoid. Anubis won't tell me which one, but we're teetering on the edge. I'm about to fall asleep, so you better hold on tight, because I'm about to introduce the rest of us, because I'm your first host, Connor.
I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Ray, rounding out the hosts for today. And we're on the raft here. We're sailing through the Overvoid, so hold on everybody. We're nearly ashore. We'll be reviewing Scarlet Spider number 15. So get your issues out, sit back, relax, and get your Khonshu on.
And don't fall off. Yes, welcome one and all to another, let's say, unhinged episode of Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. A Moon Knight podcast that's reviewing a comic with like one panel of Moon Knight. It's crazy.
Woo!
Yeah.
Like
But,
Moon Knight.
Wait.
I said it's crazy.
Hey.
I thought you were talking about the one panel thing. I got confused for a second. I'm like, what Moon Knight? Anyway, there's no point to what I'm about to say, but after last week we just couldn't get enough of his amazing vocals on our podcast. And we have a special guest joining us again this week. He needs no introduction. If you're here last time, if this is your first time, I'll let him introduce himself again. It's Tommy.
Hi everyone, happy to be here.
Hey, Tommy, how are you?
Good. Can't wait to dig into this week's issue.
Yeah, so I mean, like we had a great time last episode with yourself on doing our first Damnation review. It was for Damnation 2, and I think we kind of roundabout said it was a exciting, fun issue. There could be a lot of improvements to it. But we did make mention also that the tie-in books have a greater importance, it seems, with the Damnation event. So, for this episode, we are looking at Scarlet Spider number 15, and we ran out of time last time, Tommy. You had a whole bunch of Scarlet Spider information that you were going to unpack for us as well.
Yeah, and I think, Connor, it sounded like you had a bit too. So I just had put together a little bit of a background of Ben Reilly, who he was, and through the 90s or so. And I think, Connor, did you say that you've been reading the 2016 or 2017 run of Scarlet Spider recently, or Ben Reilly?
Yes, and I grew up reading, not actually at the time, we just had collections when I was younger of the original series he came out, back when he had his own title in the 90s, so I got a bit of history with him. But I believe Rebecca and Ray as well, have you caught up on the 2016
I
one?
read the first 2 volumes, so I'm missing a few issues between that and this. Because they just had volume 1 and 2 in their ridiculous 99-cent Comixology sale. So knowing that we were going to be talking about this, I bought them and read them the other day.
What did you think of them, Rebecca?
I really enjoyed them. I actually thought they were a lot of fun. It's not a comic I would have picked up normally.
Yeah, me too.
I'd read a little bit of speculation about them because of in the aftermath of Secret Empire, and obviously he was based in Las Vegas, which was where this huge devastation had happened. And there were certain websites that were very excited about him being in Las Vegas and kept making these big sort of speculatory sort of posts about it every week without obviously reading the comic. Because now I've read the comic, it gave me great amusement to find out that all their speculation was wrong. But no, I really enjoyed it. I would actually keep reading it if there weren't so many comics and they weren't so expensive. But I will definitely catch up with it on Marvel Unlimited once it sort of scrolls around to that.
Yeah, we had a really good conversation, Rebecca, just before we went on air about how many good comics are coming out there.
Yeah.
I know, and on top of that, that 99-cent Comixology sale, which listeners I think is still on. So you got to get in quick. It's for all Marvel, not all Marvel stuff, but a lot of Marvel stuff.
It's for a bunch of recent ones.
Yeah.
I think it might have ended, but I'm not sure.
Okay. But it was insane. It was crazy good. And I know, Connor, that you got a massive haul as well. I think I saw a photo of your receipt.
Yes, I got all aboard that sale. I bought like 30 things maybe by the end of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't far past you. It's just I think I owned more of them to start with.
But, I mean, I read a couple of, I've got the 2 volumes of Scarlet Spider as well. I think I'm up to issue 5 in the first volume, and I'm enjoying it as well. It's really different. It's not what I expected. And just the fact, I guess he's, Ben Reilly, he's not your typical superhero. He's not a really nice person, and he's got this mental problem with voices in his head. It's really making him an interesting character, and you can draw the parallels with Moon Knight, of course, but he kind of stands on his own, and it's interesting to see him with his supporting characters as well. Tommy, are you before we get into the issue, what were your thoughts on Scarlet Spider, and had you read any Scarlet Spider before?
Are we going to do the spectacle right now? Do you want to?
The spotlight, you mean?
Yeah, the spotlight.
Why not?
Or should we wait? Because I don't really mind. So I'll start with my initial thoughts, and maybe we can just make a decision.
Okay.
But so I actually had not before. I heard that Scarlet Spider was going to be appearing in Damnation. The only Scarlet Spider that I knew about came from a few different sources. One was the Secret Empire, so seeing him in a couple scenes and a couple panels. The second was from some of my students. You know, even though Scarlet Spider was a huge part of the Spider-Man mythos in the 90s, I wasn't reading any Spider-Man comics in the 90s. You know, as we spoke about last week, I just, I knew the character, and I knew he was a lot of fun, and you'd see him pop up in shows once in a while. So I really had no concept of the Scarlet Spider until 2 years ago. One of my freshman students brought in a Kleenex box for my classroom, because at the beginning of the year I asked students to bring in tissue boxes, but decorate them with their favorite character or book or something like that. And so one of my students drew this exceptional Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider in this action pose, and it looked like he was just jumping off of the tissue box, and it was really cool. And I called him Spider-Man, and my student called me out and said, "No, that's Ben Reilly. That's the Scarlet Spider." Yeah. And it was really cool, because it was an opportunity for one of my students to kind of teach me about something that, comics generally, something that I was really interested in. So that's when I started looking into Scarlet Spider, but I never picked up any issues before this week. But I did pick up the complete Ben Reilly epic trade. Okay. And so I've been picking at that this week, and it's been a great introduction to the Scarlet Spider, and kind of gives an overview of where he came from coming out of the Clone Saga with Miles Warren.
So is that going back to the 1980s then?
Yeah, I believe so.
Right.
Well, most of the issues in in this epic are from the 1990s. So I think the earliest issue is from 1990 proper. But if I recall, the Clone Saga, most of that occurred in the 1980s. So
Yeah.
The first Clone Saga was in the 80s, which Ben Reilly made a shortish appearance, but the big thing that would launch his character would be the Clone Saga, which I believe was the 93 possibly that started.
Love it, Connor. Love it, Connor. Finger on the pulse, always.
I read the most recent Clone Saga thing.
the Clone Conspiracy.
Yeah, the Clone Conspiracy.
Yeah, the Clone Conspiracy.
Yeah, that's how I know him.
So that's probably where I first really, yeah, that's right. So at least it put it into context for this series.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Because
I just oh, go for it, Ray.
Oh, sorry, I was just about to say that because in the volumes that I got from that Comixology sale, it goes into like how he was the Jackal, and it directly ties into Clone Conspiracy. So you really, and that was a fun.
So I was glad I'd read that.
Yeah. But sorry, Tommy, you were about to say.
Just that, again, and we spoke about Ben Reilly last week for several minutes, and one of the things that I just really like about Ben Reilly and what I have seen, and now that I've read some good background in the 90s, is that he is becoming a character that I might want to pick up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, regurgitate what we spoke about last week, but just the fact that, there's more than meets the eye. He's not just Peter Parker. He's not just Spider-Man, but, he has his own demons that he's dealing with. At which, welcome to Damnation, right? Maybe he is a character that belongs here, and maybe Ben Reilly isn't in Damnation just because he's in Las Vegas. That could be, but maybe his narrative arc is going to pan out through the Damnation issues and through the Damnation tie-in issues. I think there's one more Ben Reilly tie-in that's coming up, so I'm excited to see where it goes.
It kind of, you can kind of say, I guess he is a little damned as well. I mean, Connor, you were mentioning that he's been resurrected countless times as well. I guess in that sense, he's never really found peace as a clone. He's always, searching for his identity. Whenever he dies, he seems to come back. So I guess in that sense, he can, definitely fit into this whole Midnight Suns being damned and all. So, he's a very interesting character. Look, let's pull the reins back a bit on that because we'll get into that when we get into the issue as well. I wanted to just say first off as well. I mean, what is everyone else reading at the moment? And before we get into that, sorry, as well, Loonies, there is Moon Knight at the moment is very little in Scarlet Spider 15, but Scarlet Spider is quite an intriguing character, and Moon Knight is in there. But we'll try to tie it into Moon Knight where we can. But what's everyone reading at the moment? Connor, I'll take it away. This week was a bloody fantastic week for comics. There was.
Basically, like all my favorite series, I got like a new great issue of my Transformers. Absolutely hilarious, touching issue. I read Black Bolt, which came out a while ago. That was amazing. Secret Weapons, Owen's story was just
I haven't read that
perfection
yet.
in comic book form.
Awesome.
Just so much great stuff with Spider-Man and the 2-in-1, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just so much great stuff happening. I got to read an advanced copy of Max Bemis' new book, Lucid Dreaming, coming out next week.
Yeah.
It's really good. He there's a lot crammed in that first issue, and he doesn't always hit the mark, but there's just so much love behind the book. It's hard not to forgive it, and it's got great art and coloring, and it's a mixture of sweet punk and like awesome, I guess is the weirdest way I go about it. But we love Bemis here, and I love the artist whose name I don't really know how to pronounce, like Michael Dialnus.
Oh my god,
Dialnus. Who did The Woods, and it's a gorgeous book. So
can you
keep an eye on that one?
Can you see Bemis's distinct style in that, like, similar to Moon Knight, his run on Moon Knight at the moment? Or?
Oh, no, so devoid, which I think, like I said, there's like a few missteps there, but I think that's just because he's inhabiting a genre that's so different from basically any work he's done before. This is a entirely different thing from anything we've seen from him before, which I guess is basically everything he's done, one thing to the next.
Yeah, right. Right, and Tommy. Okay, sorry, Tommy. Then, what are you reading at the moment?
Yeah, this week, the only two issues that I read were Doctor Strange 387
Excellent.
and Ben Reilly the Scarlet Spider 15.
That's all you need.
Just because of life is busy. But I am subscribing to Tom King's Mr. Miracle, and so issue 7 came out this week. And if you've seen the cover, it's not ruining anything. But Mr. Miracle and Big Barda have a child together, and so the baby's born. And so I'm excited to dig into that because I've really grown to love Tom King. I'm picking up his Batman run that's out right now. The Vision series from a couple years ago, just unbelievable. And the Mr. Miracle series really is pretty cool. And again, I guess I'm showing something else that I must be interested in, but the idea of mental illness.
Yeah.
Not only with our boy Moon Knight here, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. There are elements of Ben Reilly that seem to suggest that he's not whole, and his mind might be fractured for a few different reasons. And in Mr. Miracle, we're dealing with a character that perhaps is clinically depressed, and he's dealing with great loss. Even when there are amazing things happening around him, like his wife Big Barda loves him, and they have this child together. There are parts of him that just don't seem right, and so that's what has been really fun to read in Mr. Miracle. I guess fun is not the right word to use, but it adds a number of layers to the character, and it's again not just a beat 'em up, sock 'em up comic.
Yeah.
But it's turning into what would probably be a proper graphic novel.
Yeah.
And so it makes the reader question themselves a little bit. So I'm looking forward to reading that. But otherwise, this week I only picked up the 2 Damnation tie-ins to read. So.
Okay, and just a reminder to loonies out there, and anyone listening, the Damnation tie-in Doctor Strange issue 387 will be covered in the Defenders TV podcast episode, which will be dropped, I believe, sometime this weekend. So keep your ears out for that one. That should be great. Tommy, would you rate Mr. Miracle? It got a lot of credit, I guess, last year and coming into this year as well. Would you put it up there as one of the titles to get?
Oh, absolutely, and I think that's the accolades that the series has received so far from, pardon me, many reviewers and critics has been nothing but good. The quote that is on issue 7 here on the cover from Wired, like Wired.com, Wired magazine. Heartbreaking, funny, and human. It's an all-time classic in the making. And this is, we're into issue 7 of 12, so we're just breaking into the bottom half of the series, and this is going to continue for most of, or the better part of this year, 2018. I think they've released 1 or 2 director's cuts of the first or second issue. So those would be interesting or good for individuals to pick up. I think that first printing of issue number 1 and maybe issue number 2 are going for at least $60 or $75 on eBay.
Wow.
It has really become a very much loved run, and I know that most of us here on the podcast today read mostly Marvel, and I know that y'all read Valiant, and I'm starting to get into Image Comics. But I pick up a few DC issues, and I'm really glad that my comic shop, so Deanna and Gavin Willard at Tardy's Comics in Grand Rapids, I want to give them credit. But Gavin suggested this for me, and I'm glad that I picked it up because it's something that I know that I'm going to reread, and I know that 30 years from now, it's going to stand as one of the best comic series that I've read. So I'd absolutely pick it up.
Oh, fantastic. And Tommy, you'll have to, after the show, give me the details for that comic book store. I'd like to put it in this, the show notes as well for anyone out there who's around the area. Pick it up, or to check out that store. That'll be good. Rebecca, I know that you're probably drowning in a mountain of comic books at the moment.
I am at my sister's house, and I asked them to leave me out some comics, and every room I go into has piles of trades for me, like 22 volumes of Invincible and original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know Connor will be very excited about that.
Yeah.
I just threw it to one side. Astro City, everywhere I look, there's comics I've not read, and it's a great show of when, even if you think you're well read, you just go to somebody who doesn't read the same kind of comics as you, and there's just this mass. But I mean, I read the same as most of you guys. I read Doctor Strange and Reilly.
Mm-hmm.
I read 2-in-1 like Connor, and also Chip Zdarsky's Spectacular Spider-Man, both excellent this week.
Yeah.
As Connor said, Secret Weapons Owen's story was a perfect comic. What else did I read? Also Transformers, because someone has got me into it.
I wonder who.
But I can legit say it's the only one this week that made me cry.
Oh, wow.
And actually made me not only cry, but also gasp, like proper, which is always great when it happens in comics. Also shout out to Michael Cray, the Wildstorm now DC issue, where it's very fun, and you've got an assassin being set on alternate versions of the DC heroes. So he's already taken out Green Arrow and Flash, and he's doing Aquaman at the moment with the setup for who he's doing next. And oh my god, I cannot wait. It was brilliant. Also read Mr. Miracle, although I've actually read issue 7. And it's a great run, but I didn't love this issue that much. But I think it's because I bought it in hard copy. Because I'm finally living somewhere for the next 4 weeks where there's a comic shop within a 20-minute walk.
That's so cool.
And I went in and actually picked it up on paper, and I have to say that I do not like adverts in my atmospheric comics.
Yeah.
Because, yes, it's incredibly atmospheric. The art's gorgeous.
And it just takes you out of it.
And there is this very claustrophobic. Every issue of Mr. Miracle, as Tommy said, it's very into the sort of what's going on from a sort of, there's a definite mental health perspective to it. And a sort of breakdown of anxiety and what's real and what's not, and all the things that play into the character. It's a very serious take on him, and for some reason, I've read most of the other ones digitally, although I do have the first few issues in paper, but I bought them digitally because it's easier for me to read, and I did not realise how much the adverts would jar me out of it.
Oh, it's a bugger.
And I don't know if it was just me feeling a bit grouchy because I'd kind of read it, because the actual story and everything in it is great, but I think I read it and I just went, you know what, I'm just going to buy the trade now.
Yeah.
Or I'm just going to read it digitally. But as Tommy says, these issues are all going to be worth a lot of money. It's another masterpiece by Tom King. I don't think I personally like it as much as Sheriff of Babylon or Amiga Men, but it's all going to depend on the last couple of issues, I think, like how it all ties together, what the actual answers are. But the first 6 are impeccable, and it's just this one that's had this hiccup for me. But not saying it's bad, because if I could rip all the adverts out and reread it and have a different experience, but I guess I really didn't realise how much adverts could, if you've got a comic that's drawn you in that much. Oh, and I should probably give a shout out to Falcon, which is a comic I never read. I read the first issue of, thought, nah, don't like it, and picked this one up because it had Misty Knight on the front, because, yes, I am a bit of an Iron Fist obsessive.
Yeah.
And it was really good, and I feel really bad, so everyone should check out Falcon.
Cool. And
also shout out to all the indie publishers like Lion Forge and Vault Comics and Image who have like no ads.
Oh, right, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have that problem at all with them, I guess. I can just imagine, Rebecca, you're reading and then up pops an ad of, I don't know, Metamucil or something.
I wanted to take a photo of it just to show people, because there's one where one of the adverts, I can't remember what it was, but it was for something quite comical.
Yeah.
And it's just like this very tense scene in the hospital of someone, about to give birth.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this kind of like, hey, buy this.
Oh, okay,
it's like, okay.
It's a bit silly, yeah.
Like, I don't mind when they have the adverts at the front and back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's for a TV series on True TV called Impractical Jokers.
Oh, okay. I think I've...
and you're like, okay, thanks, comic.
It's just not Bendis is coming.
If it's Bendis is coming, that just makes me laugh every time I see it.
I think that's will make it rip it out.
Even there's also an advert for Tomb Raider and one for Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. But even those, there is a Bendis is coming one.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's the different. The Bendis is coming is a 2-page spread, so it's not against an actual page of comic.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and all the other comics are quite dark, so they're fine. It was just that one for Impractical Jokers, and I was like, we're reading Mr. Miracle here. Like, can we not?
Yeah, a bit ill-placed, I think, yeah.
And I hadn't realised, I think it's one of the things that once you switch to mostly digital, I didn't realise, but for the next few weeks I'm going to be buying a lot more paper. So.
Are you going to be buying more paper?
Well, because I'm now in a town that I can walk to a comic shop, and the guy was lovely, and it was so nice.
Yeah, there are a lot of perks.
I wish I had a local comic shop.
Yeah, and we have to urge as well. Like, I mean, comics are great, and it's great to read it, and digitals are good as well. But support your local comic book store if you can, because you're bound to get lots of information from them as well, and they're like-minded as well. They're passionate about collecting and reading, so there's no better place to go. I followed it similar to you guys. I followed Doctor Strange 387 and of course Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider. One of the highlights for me was, and this ties into our news, I read Vampironica. I got that from Greg Smallwood. And can I just say, I don't know how, I was just like in awe I was absorbing every panel that Smallwood was drawing. It is so much fun to actually look at his artwork, and the story was good. It kind of travelled on quite well, and it's like Veronica as almost as like a Blade, she's a bit of a vampire hunter, but the artwork was just brilliant. So I'd have to give it a lot of stars just for Greg Smallwood's art, and of course. Greg Smallwood and Meg Smallwood, a pretty cool first issue, I think. So, story-wise, it was very good. Apart from that, I caught up on Gideon Falls by Jeff Lemire, Midnight alumni, and I thought that was really good. I love Sorrentino's artwork. So that had a nice particular dark feel to it.
How horror was it? Because that's...
No, not too much.
I was put off by the horror.
How would you say, Connor? Would you...
Yeah, not too bad. Like, probably like... have you seen Twin Peaks, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Yes, it's kind of... That book reads really like a TV show, like really like a Twin Peaks episode. It's like the horror stuff and that kind of turned up quite a bit, but it's kind of like unsettling, and then here's one page of like dark and atmospheric, like dark and spooky. It's really just sort of...
Yeah.
It's the book's more about being in this weird, unsettling atmosphere than it is with like super disturbing imagery, a la like
psychological horror.
Have an
Would
example.
you call it that? Or?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, I might check it out then.
It's pretty good. I mean, look, it's a nice first issue. It's got me intrigued and keen to read it. But other than that, I got a big haul from Comixology, so that will keep me going for the next 5 years. So there's plenty to read. Okay, guys, I think let's head over to a very short bit of news. Again, kind of trying to fish around for Moon Knight related news. Not much except for the Moon Knight alumni. As mentioned before, Vampironica has come out, and it's come out with great reviews. So Comics Beat reviewed Vampironica, and it's quite got a favourable review, as well as what was this one from again? Newsarama. Its features is one of the best shots for Vampironica, 8 out of 10. Gorgeous debut. So, getting a lot of accolades there. The second bit of news, Connor, can I throw that one to you? The first point, I guess. Just the date release.
Yes, Sentry by Jeff Lemire. Tommy Ray and I spoke about being very hyped for it, and Rebecca is very much the same. Is dropping the 6th of June, with solicitation should be this, like, Monday coming, yeah?
Right.
No, that's DC. DC is Mondays. Marvel should be like Wednesday or something. Sorry.
Oh, sweet. So still next week. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
Sorry, that's a bit anal.
Oh, no, that's alright. It's good to be right on. Yeah.
Yes, that is super exciting. So yes, that's releasing on the 6th of June, and we will get the rest of the solicitations with the new Moon Knight issues and all the other issues coming out around then too, which is super exciting.
Fantastic. So Sentry, Scarlet Spider, Moon Knight, and Mr. Miracle all seem to have something in common there. So, I think we've all got kind of similar tastes. All right, I think it's time now for us to... actually, Tommy, I was going to actually throw it to you. Shall we, what do you reckon? I think we might do a spotlight first, yeah? On Scarlet Spider?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, so, and everybody please fill in the gaps, because like I said, I've just done a little bit of research by reading some of the 90s issues and just looking up online, having conversations with my students again. And that's where I gotta, thank my students, because it's been a lot of fun these last couple weeks doing some research on characters that I don't read as often as, say, Moon Knight. So that's been really great. So Scarlet Spider, again, one of the more, I think, elusive characters in my reading, but has become very interesting, just because, again, there seems to be a lot to the character that we don't necessarily see, but he's also, as goes with many comic book characters, and is the nature of comics, he's a very confusing character, just because he is a clone of Peter Parker, and several times throughout probably the 80s, but also the 90s, their personalities have switched in a way, because somebody tells them that Peter is actually the clone, and then Ben Reilly becomes Spider-Man for a while, and then that reverses again, and then it reverses and reverses and reverses. So, bear with me here. So, Ben Reilly has his roots as a clone that was created by Miles Warren, who is a villain known as the Jackal. And so Miles Warren, before he began engaging with Gwen Stacy or Peter Parker, he was actually employed by the High Evolutionary in Transia on Mount Wundagore, which is where we met Elsa Bloodstone in last week's Damnation 2.
Yeah.
And so the High Evolutionary, in his laboratories, his compound, his base, Warren worked as some type of scientist and gained the name the Jackal out of a mistake that he made, and was expelled from the High Evolutionary's employ. But later he goes on to become a professor, a teacher at Empire State University. He has students like Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker, and sometime he requested that his students donate a few drops of blood for an experiment that they were conducting in class. And so from that, Miles Warren, the Jackal, then starts creating these clones. And the first clone that he creates becomes Kane, the villain. It's kind of a defective clone of Peter Parker, and it's through Kane that Miles Warren discovers that Parker's blood is irradiated. And so he then begins creating these other clones. And sometime along the way, he creates the clone that would become Ben Reilly. But Ben Reilly didn't have the name yet. He just thought that he was Peter Parker. Mm-hmm. And so he and Spider-Man, Peter Parker, they have a few bouts. They fight. They both think that they're Peter Parker, the original and the clone. And then after a time, I want to say it was Aunt May is on her deathbed, or she's very ill, but Peter Parker refuses to allow the clone to be present while she's dying, or while she's sick, or while she's ill. And so the clone is basically forced out of the lives of, I think it's Gwen, it might be Mary Jane by this point. But then he is then essentially expelled for 5 years of exile, and that's when he really becomes Ben Reilly. And he gets the name Ben Reilly from Uncle Ben, mm-hmm. and Aunt May's maiden name Reilly. Oh, and so he becomes Ben Reilly and the Scarlet Spider, as dubbed by the newspapers. But again, he has retained, throughout his entire life as a clone, he has retained all of Peter Parker's memories, and he and his emotions, and he is a perfect clone of Peter Parker. And so they are both essentially Spider-Man. And then there's a bit too in the 90s where Peter Parker is being mopey and talking to MJ, and he decides to leave New York City for a time, and he thinks that he has failed the world, and he's made all these mistakes, and people die when he gets involved, and Mary Jane basically smacks him out of it and says, Peter, you're an idiot. You're a superhero. You've saved thousands, maybe millions, maybe even billions of lives. And Parker asks Ben Reilly to kind of take over as Spider-Man in New York while he's on his own self-imposed exile. And so it's just, I don't know if that's 90s being 90s, but the back and forth of I'm Spider-Man, no, I'm Spider-Man. Well, no, you're Ben Reilly, no, I'm Ben Reilly, you're the Scarlet Spider, switching in. It was just, it's been very confusing. Yeah. And so I don't appreciate that aspect of the character. But what I really do like is that later, and Connor and Rebecca, if you can speak to this, but in speaking with one of my students, he told me that the Jackal found out that with these clones and the defected clones, there's this cellular degeneration process that allowed the Jackal to essentially create many clones, so upwards of 25 or 26 clones over and over and over again, just to let them die. And so what I've found, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that these clones of Ben Reilly or Peter Parker, whatever you want to say, call it, they kind of remember that process of being created and then dying, and then created and dying over and over and over again, 25, 26, 27, 28 times. And that essentially has pushed Ben Reilly to the brink of, for lack of a better term here, insanity. And so that's where, Scarlet Spider has become most interesting for me, is this idea that he has been tortured, essentially, in almost 30 different lives. And he becomes a very sympathetic character for me. Not only because he's cool, right? He's got, I think, a really cool costume with the late 1980s, early 1990s ripped off sweatshirt, right?
I love the hood. I think it's good.
Yeah.
I love the costume, yeah.
But the muscle building, torn off arm sweatshirt is just kind of silly.
Yeah.
But the design of his costume has been pretty consistent from the 90s into the current run, including Damnation, Scarlet Spider issue 15, where he has web fluid packs on a belt, but also as wrist bracelets, but also as ankle bracelets. But then, as we see in Damnation 15, he, has other cargo packs and leather packs. And in some of the 90s comics, he even has these little pouches that he carries that don't necessarily have web fluid in them. And so he just seems kind of like a rugged, almost like a ranger, or almost like a Ronin type, and not Ronin as in the Marvel character, but Ronin as in the samurai without a master to serve, the lone gunman, and just trying to figure out how he fits in the world. And again, the idea that his mind has retained not only the memories and the life of Peter Parker, but the fact that perhaps his mind has retained the memory of being resurrected in a way, or cloned, whatever we should say, and then killed, 24 times, really starts to show that this is a character that is struggling with much more than your average Marvel character. Yeah. And I know that many contemporary characters that are created in the 2000 teens here for the first time, and they get their own series, like thinking like Moon Girl, for example. These characters are rich, and they have this depth of character, and the creators ensure that they have some flaw, whether that ultimately becomes tragic, or maybe it's a fatal flaw, or maybe it's just something that is going to get them into trouble every 6 issues. But Ben Reilly has had that since the beginning. And that wasn't something that some writer just wrote in 10 years after he was created to make this character more interesting, to boost up sales. Yeah. Ben Reilly, I feel, has really been, has been able to maintain that rich, deep, well-rounded set of characteristics. And so I'm excited to see where he goes. I'm excited to pick up these last 16, 17, or 18 issues from this current run that you were mentioning before. But just the idea that he is he's not of a sound mind, potentially, and that he is struggling with things that we can't see. Again, that's what led me into Moon Knight. Yeah. There are aspects of Batman that are just like that too. And I really appreciate that, and I'm excited to see what his role is going to be in Scarlet Spider, or excuse me, in Damnation, rather than just somebody that throws cement trucks at Avengers Ghost Riders, right?
Yeah. Look, I think he's and the more that we delve into his history, the more kind of appropriate he is in amongst this Damnation thing. And what you've raised, Tommy's, there are a couple of really good points in the fact that, of course, the parallels between himself and Moon Knight. Look, although both were done in very different ways, Scarlet Spider's almost like really a ramped up version of Moon Knight, isn't he, with regards to resurrection? Both have been resurrected. Moon Knight was resurrected as well, and it's kind of affected them. And it kind of, for me, it harks back to almost like kind of Pet Sematary or Flatliners kind of mythos, in the sense that, once you're resurrected or you come back from the dead or from, the shining light at the end of the tunnel, you come back affected. And we see this, with Scarlet Spider, and we see it with Moon Knight as well. So I think it's got that kind of thread running through it, and it very much reminds me of those kind of movies and those kind of, that kind of chain of thought of what happens if you're to be resurrected. You come back, but you're not quite, as you were. But
I think he was always designed that way. I mean, because from what I understand of the original Clone Saga, which I started reading and wasn't in the mood for when I started reading it, obviously. But I mean, that whole thing about that not really being sure at one point which was the clone that they pulled on him. Right, yeah. It's like, that's got to mess you up before you even start dying and being rezzed. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So he's always had that kind of...
identity crisis, basically. Yeah.
Pretty, yes, if we're going to go DC with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, that's got to really mess with you, and then add everything else since, and then you get more to the Moon Knight comparisons as well. But I think he is one of those characters that people who are of the age where the Clone Saga was going on just, like, passionately love him. And we're all I'm scrambling a bit to catch up with him. Yeah. And I will say that from reading the first 2 volumes of this, one of the things that I think was done particularly well was how he gets back in the standard costume.
Oh yes, yeah.
I thought I loved it so much.
That was
I was
really
like,
cool.
I love you. I love you, comic writers. Sometimes you're just a joy.
Yeah.
You've given us all the Scarlet Spider outfit we want, but you've done it in a totally sensible way of somebody who's come from this clone conspiracy thing and is now sort of coming back to that role.
Yeah, I liked his.
Rebecca, are you referring to the fact that he essentially steals his costume?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
right. Well, hey, Rebecca, why don't you go for it? Tell everybody about it. Who does he steal it from?
He steals it from a cosplayer.
He does.
A Scarlet Spider cosplayer.
Yep.
Which is just, I mean, they're in Vegas, so and then he runs into a bunch of people dressed up as various Spider-Man.
Yeah, the neighborhood of web slingers or something. They're like a neighborhood watch group, and they're spider people. Yeah. So
it's really fun.
It is pretty funny. It is good. That is quite fun. I did like his older costume, like what he started with, that kind of revamped costume.
Yeah, that was pretty good too.
It's got the Gwen's the Spider-Gwen kind of hood, and it kind of showed his mouth off a bit more. But his old costume was really cool as well. The other thing I wanted to draw comparisons or ask you guys as well with Scarlet Spider and Peter Parker, the whole fact that, okay, so as you said, Tommy, he was cloned from Peter Parker. He's got all the traits of Peter Parker, of Spider-Man as well, but there must be an inherent difference, I guess, in personality between Peter and Ben Reilly, which makes them kind of veer away onto their own different paths. And for me, reading the first volume of Scarlet Spider, it seems very apparent that he's not as upstanding, I guess, as Peter Parker. But do you guys get that sense of the Scarlet Spider not being morally, his moral compass?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think we'll get into it when we start this issue. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's the nature versus nurture.
Yes,
debate,
exactly.
So we know that Uncle Ben shaped Peter and Aunt May, but we know those things shape Peter to the core.
Yeah,
and Ben doesn't have that.
Exactly, and I like the fact that this kind of draws it out, and the fact that, the Scarlet Spider is meant to be a clone, but as you rightly say, it actually makes Peter Parker more special because it was his upbringing by by Uncle Ben, that that kind of formed this really unique character in Spider-Man. The guy that you see in Homecoming and in the comics, when he's down and he has a building on top of him, he finds that little bit extra, and he's always he never gives up, and that's what I really like about Spider-Man. Having said that, Scarlet Spider is just as interesting, I think, in Peter Parker, but in so many different ways, and as you say, we'll get into that with the comics. So,
I think,
that was it.
That's sort of the great thing about the Peter David run, is that it did that for Ben's character, because Ben's character really was, back in the day, just Spider-Man, but better. Like, the whole thing was that he was, he was Spider-Man, but he didn't have the Parker luck, because he was a clone, and that made him better back in the 90s, and then, the identity crisis was his moral thing back in the 90s, but he was still a very wholesome hero, and it was kind of cool what they did in the clone conspiracy from Slott and what Peter David built upon, because the thing with Ben Reilly is that while I grew up with him and loved him for his cool hoodie costume and the problem is that he came from the Clone Saga in the 90s, which sucks. Like, it's a terrible event.
Right.
It is often contributed to the thing that killed Marvel Comics in the 90s.
Okay.
It is the first thing that led, not the first thing, no, definitely not. That was the entirety of the 90s, but it was kind of the massive signpost of this is where Marvel Comics went into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Like, it is. And that's sort of the problem. I love Ben Reilly with all my heart because I read him as a kid, but going back through, it's fair that you'd go, nah, not for me, because over 50% of the stories he's in suck. You kind of almost, you get those epic collections, you kind of have to look up a best of to find the things where you're like, alright, what's good? And so, it's kind of unfortunate visiting in the back after being a kid, because, it's not that great.
Yeah.
And I still love this character, and I think it's such a great evolution that Slott, then Peter David just kind of went, okay, he was Peter Parker, but, outside of being Peter Parker, what actually, is the fundamental core of being a clone more than just...
Yeah.
What are the psychological impacts, as you said, and they really delved into that, and why he sort of became unhinged in this run, and why you're so right about the Uncle Ben thing.
Mm. Yeah, it actually just adds so many more layers to him, and for this day and age where all the comic readers are quite savvy now, wanting a bit more depth to all their characters. I think Peter David and Dan Slott have full credit to them. They've done really well with Ben Reilly, and as Rebecca, as you said earlier on, and Tommy. This is something that I never would have thought of collecting or even looked into. So hats off to Damnation for opening our eyes to how complicated and interesting a character the Scarlet Spider is. Look, I'm just raring to go with this comic book review. Having known, Tommy, is there anything else on Ben Reilly by way of, I guess, power set and stuff like that? How does he stack up?
Just that he has all the same powers as Peter Parker.
Yeah.
One thing that, and I don't want to take this away from Rebecca when we get over the moon in just a minute, but we see something slightly different with his spider sense in this issue, so I'd like to talk about that later.
Very good. True.
But the only other thing I think that I want to say is that, where Connor was mentioning that Peter was raised by Uncle Ben and Aunt May. Ben Reilly really raised himself as an adult. He never really had a childhood, and when he has to relive these lives knowing that he's been tortured almost 30 times, it really messes him up. And so the current Ben Reilly from the panels that I have seen, and even in this issue, as volatile as he is at times, he seems to be less angry and more, I think, less angry at the world around him.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's more angry at the world around him. I don't know, but I think he's dealing with a lot of resentment that he's not Spider-Man, right? He's not Peter Parker, even though he is Peter Parker. He's forced out of New York in a way, or maybe he self-imposes that removal. But he's very complex, and I'm not sure we see anything too new from him in this Damnation issue, but I do look forward to continuing this part of the discussion after we go over the moon.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you said, he might be a little less angry. You may or may not be a little less angry, but he's no less dangerous as well. We see, and we'll get into Damnation, Scarlet Spider 15, but we see also, casting back to issue 1 of Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider, he has no problems using firearms, and he actually shoots a mugger through the kneecap just to make a point. Yeah, when saving that lady. So he's quite brutal in that sense, and he hasn't got that kind of filter, which I think Peter Parker does. And again, it shows their different paths. So yeah, very cool. Anything on supporting characters? Tommy or Connor or Rebecca? I was thinking more along the lines of Mercury Towers in the current run. There seems to be Slate, which is that bodyguard, and Cassandra.
And
Aunt
June too.
Yeah. Oh, and Aunt June as well. Yeah, as well. So, was there earlier on in the 90s? I guess they were all. It would either be all Peter Parker, Kane, Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane. That would be all the supporting characters, right, of the Scarlet Spider as well.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, he tapped into the Clone Saga, and then when he took over as Peter Parker, when Tommy said, and with his great summary about him becoming Peter Parker and that back and forth, because for some reason Marvel editorial thought that fans would react positively if they kicked out their favourite character by making him look like a wuss and replacing him with a clone, because that's what they did back then, because they were idiots. But his relationship with Kane is probably one of the most interesting things.
Yeah,
I think definitely came out of that character.
Yeah, they were always at loggerheads, right?
Yeah, okay. Because now this is the part where I believe, because Cain was, I believe, the first clone, the perfect clone. You know, it's why he's disfigured. He's got the scars, and then Ben Reilly is the one that came out perfect, like Peter Parker, but almost better. So, you know,
right.
I believe in like the original Clone Saga is pitted against Ben, like, you know, this is everything you're not, you failure, like sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, right.
And you get a bit of that in the current run as well, which is really well done, and that's the reason I went back on, because someone posted a screen cap of like, hey, Kane's in this run. I'm like, alright, there goes my money. And then I really enjoyed that issue, so I bought the rest.
Yeah, really do like Kane. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that seems to cover it for Scarlet Spider. So with all that information under our belts, and for loonies listening as well, I think it's time to go over the moon.
Yes, the summary of Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider, Volume 1, Issue 15, part of the Damnation tie-in event. It's released this week, so the 14th of March, I think, was the Wednesday. Writer Peter David, pencils and inks, Will Sliney, colorist Rochelle Rosenberg, letterers, nicest man in comics, Species Joe Caramagno, and the editors Devin Lewis, Nick Lowen, Tom Groneman. Ben Reilly returns to Mercury Towers after a brief run-in with Mysterio, and he's surprised to see Aunt June missing from her favourite slot machine. He's greeted by a mysterious young girl when he goes up to Aunt June's, what's he got? He's got her big suite in the hotel, and his aunt's nowhere to be seen. The young girl introduces herself as Jezebel, and she reveals to Ben that her employers have Aunt June. Sensing trouble afoot, and in typical Scarlet Spider fashion, Ben threatens the small girl, despite the fact she's quite young. All that's irrelevant, as it doesn't take long before we see that Jezebel is not what she seems. With an undetermined psionic ability, she thrusts Ben across the room and gains his attention. Before anything else can happen, the apartment shakes viciously, and a surprised Ben Reilly suspects that Jezebel has something to do with it. Jezebel, addressing Ben as Scarlet Spider now, tells him of the recent eruption around Las Vegas and Doctor Strange's attempt to resurrect the city, and the subsequent arrival of the Hotel Inferno. Ben asks Jezebel if she's part of Mephisto's crew, but to his surprise, she says she's not. Instead, she works for another organisation, the Diogenes Initiative, and she urges the Scarlet Spider to join the fight with the Midnight Suns to overturn the chaos Mephisto has wrought on Las Vegas. Reminding him that they still have Aunt June, Scarlet Spider agrees to join the fray, but before departing he manages to dish out some just desserts of his own. Outside, all of Las Vegas is slowly turning to demons, and the Scarlet Spider manages to save a local gun shop owner from the clutches of a demonic McDonald's employee. In gratitude, the owner gives Ben an arsenal of weapons, but it's not long before they see another demon behind the wheel of a cement mixer, terrorising the local population who haven't yet turned to the dark side. The Scarlet Spider commandeers the truck, and his spidey sense leads him to where real trouble awaits. It's the Avengers, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Falcon, Thor and Hawkeye, and they've recently been transformed to Ghost Riders by Mephisto. Nearby, the Midnight Suns, our gang, are poised to engage in battle with them, but the battle is abruptly interrupted as the Scarlet Spider slams the truck into the demonic Avengers. The Scarlet Spider then greets the Midnight Suns and says, "Follow me!"
Yes. Yes. So yeah, a fun-filled issue, and we are happy to report that Moon Knight has kept his shenanigans to a minimum here, so no running around with arrows in legs, and no funny quips. To remind anyone listening to us as well, so Rebecca just gave us a great bare bones, which is the synopsis of the issue that we're reviewing. We will be looking at 4 main aspects, 4 main themes of the issue that we'd like to discuss, and that kind of built up the whole issue as it was. And any notes that we can come up with that are just kind of sundry notes and little points of observation. And to cap that all off, we each give it a Crescent Dart rating out of 5. So as always as well, I might ask Connor first, what were your first impressions of this issue?
Well, I thought it was okay. Yeah, like I said, I've really been enjoying this run. I thought this issue contained a bit of the fun. It was kind of just like what happened in the lead up to this. It was, it wasn't too exciting. It felt, a little short and underwhelming. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think it was a bit better than mediocre, but didn't really do anything new or fun for me. And I think it's setting up enough to make the next issue more interesting, because we have 16 coming up, and then hopefully the issues after that will continue to be, just a lot of fun. And we'll talk about what happened at the end there.
Yeah, yes, we will. Rebecca, how about you? What were your first impressions of issue 15?
I enjoyed it. I think it's reading all. I mean, I've read everything so far from Damnation, which I wasn't expecting to. I was expecting to skip this one because I thought I'd catch it in trade. But then when you were saying come on the podcast, I was like, I'll pick it up. And it's quite jarring that Doctor Strange seems to be the must read.
Yes,
like almost more than the event book itself.
Yes,
so it was kind of weird to read Damnation 2 and then come back to one which quite clearly says in the front page this takes place between issues 1 and 2. So it's filling in gaps, and it's bringing in the people who've been reading Ben Reilly, which is great. But you will feel a little bit of that kind of, when you used to go into comic shops and buy things out of order. Feels a little bit like that.
Kind of backtracking.
Yeah, and I imagine when they put it in trade, this will come before issue 2 of Damnation, so it'll all seem a little bit more like this fit together a bit more smoothly. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I still like the character. I'm glad I read those first 2 volumes, so I had some idea who Aunt June was. But it would have been fine. I mean, it's fine without that.
True. And
I think the next issue is going to be like Connor just said, the next issue is the one to watch.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess this is the first tie-in from Scarlet Spider.
This is just getting him into the action of Damnation, which is cool.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see what he does in his unhinged, manner. Tommy, how about you with initial impressions?
I enjoyed it, but I think I enjoyed it for a couple different reasons. One, this was essentially my first comic book issue exposure to Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider. So I like that I was learning a lot about the way that he processes the world around him, the way that he reacts, getting to know his humor. But I also enjoyed it just as the fact that it was part of this Damnation event. And I mentioned across several minutes last week just the reasons why I'm really buying into the Damnation event. So I like that this was just world building and showing us a little bit more of what life is like in Las Vegas, especially after Secret Empire. But I'd say that the issue for me, again, as a newcomer, read kind of like it had to me the similar tone of Spider-Man and Deadpool comic.
Okay.
In the sense that not that this was a buddy comic or, Spider-Man versus Deadpool, the two going against each other, and the hijinks therein. But I guess what I mean is that the tone of the character writing, was a mix of humor and showing us that, Ben Reilly's kind of questionable ethics. But, even just the splash page that we have toward the end of the issue, which again, I won't speak about in too much detail, but there's this splash page toward the end of the issue that showcases Scarlet Spider and makes him look exactly like Deadpool.
Yeah.
Which for me was fun, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But so I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that like, if I were to have just picked up this issue, I probably wouldn't be keen to pick up other Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider issues. But based off of last week's discussion, based off of today's discussion, he is a character that I'm going to seriously think about picking up in the future.
Yeah, I would align myself very much with your thoughts, Tommy. Actually, as well, I found myself quite excited by this because I don't know anything about the Scarlet Spider, and again, having talked about it last week, I came into this issue kind of wide-eyed and kind of trying to absorb everything because he sounded like a really cool character when we discussed him, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed the art as well. William Sliney, I hadn't heard of before, but to me, he's got a bit of a mix of Mark Bagley, a bit of Dale McKean, and a little bit of Gary Frank, which I like that sort of art. Nice and clean, but it's I think the colours help as well. So I really enjoyed the art in this. I thought the story ticked along. It had a lot more, I guess, to say than Damnation 2. So at least it was, and again, it's because I'm coming into it new and fresh into Scarlet Spider. I kind of was absorbing it all, and to me, I found it was quite entertaining. In the scheme of things, if you look back at it from a different perspective, it really doesn't tell you that much more than what Damnation is already. Hotel Inferno coming out of the ground, and basically where we were at the end of Damnation 2. But yeah, I was very, very happy with this issue, actually, and it furthers the point that you said, Rebecca, that I think the tie-ins, Doctor Strange definitely, but for me, Scarlet Spider even, is quite a strong tie-in compared to the core books, so...
I'm already telling you, Iron Fist is going to be a very strong tie-in.
Yeah, you've told me many times how excited you are for Iron Fist, and I understand your excitement. I'm rubbing my hands basically for it as well. Incredible. It's going to be so cool. So tie-ins seem to be ruling this event at the moment. Sorry, Connor, you were...
But I think Tommy's totally right. He does come across very much as a kind of Spider-Man Deadpool amalgam.
Oh, totally.
Which is I love.
Yeah, totally.
And it is really reminiscent of if you read the Spider-Man Deadpool comic before they switched to the Spider-Man versus Deadpool, it's very much that humour.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I love them. So
really cool. Okay, so with our initial thoughts, how about we get stuck into it? We've got 4 main aspects, and since there's 4 of us, hey, why don't we do one each? I don't know whose is whose, but Rebecca, do you want to kick us off?
I'll kick you off with one I can't answer.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Right.
So maybe Connor can.
Maybe Connor, yeah. Connor.
Yeah.
Oh, mine was a rubbish one. I actually think there's one of the really fun standouts in this was kind of actually perfectly follows on from the Spider-Man Deadpool comment. There's a great little action scene with Ben Reilly and the demon fighting that McDonald's, the McDonald's employee demon.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so great that it's really is that perfect Spider-Man Deadpool, because you got to get this sort of great, fun web slinging action of pulling the webs in 2 different directions and swinging them up and flying around by the seat of the web and all this crazy stuff, and then you get that bit of Deadpool that comes from Ben Reilly's mental state when you hear his inner monologues about the situation. Then as soon as he throws this demon to his probable death, he immediately suits up gung-ho.
Yeah.
It's just so great. It's just kind of just sort of such a definitely the most fun and funny part of this issue of just what someone like Ben Reilly without that superhero complex would do in an apocalypse type situation. It's just what I hope we get to see more of in 16. That was just so fun. It's hell yeah, why wouldn't you? Are you really going to want to just rely on your fists against fire-breathing demons? And
There's some
I love
really
the
nice
Spider-Man
art
action.
there as well, like
Beautiful.
the
Yeah.
panel where it's all blurry
Yes.
because he's
Yeah.
like they're flying off.
Lot of
Really nice stuff.
And I like how Peter David really does think about stuff that you usually would take for granted. Like, I like the idea how he kind of makes focus how Ben Reilly, will stick to the ground because he's a spider, right? He sticks to walls, but the demon's so strong he just like breaks him from the ground and off he goes. So just those little things, because that would be an advantage. Like, you can anchor yourself if you're a spider person. Anchoring yourself to the ground would be like a really difficult thing to overcome. But I like how he points that out, Peter David.
I agree.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah. Tommy, how about you? What would you say your main aspect for this?
Yeah, sure. I had a couple things that came up. And one of the things that I was thinking about speaking about was just the idea that we see Ben Reilly's questionable morality and the humor that comes out of that, and so it was a very funny issue. But I think rather what I'd say is a main aspect is the art, is Sliney's art. And I know that Rebecca, maybe it was you several minutes ago, or Ray, just saying that you hadn't really heard of Sliney before. Yeah. But especially to play off of and piggyback off of Connor's comments on the fight scene, or as we have in the notes, Scarlet ruins sucky demon. Nice job, Connor. But the art in this issue I thought was really cool because it at first it looks very clean.
It does,
and that to me is a contemporary Spider-Man comic. It should look clean. And while Scarlet Spider is not Spider-Man, I liked how Sliney mixed my wish for those clean lines with a lot of really interesting action and movement. And someone just mentioned just 2 minutes ago about the blurred images that we have, especially in that flying scene. But I think even within the apartment when Jezebel, the child demon, forces Ben and throws him into a chair, and he flies across the room, and the chair falls backwards. There's some great humor there.
There is.
I love that.
Not just
that was a great scene.
Humor not just in the dialogue, but humor in the action and the movement. And if I can't tell you what number scene this is, but it's the page where there's this bleeding panel where Ben is thrown by Jezebel, and there's this orange background, and she has these flames coming out of her eyes, and Ben bleeds off of that panel. But then you see him fly across the room, and then for the three final panels, he's motionless, and that just his legs staying in the same position as we read the dialogue there. The contrast between his flying across the room and then being forced to stay still for a few minutes or a few moments was really cool. But then again, with the surging, tower, the Hotel Inferno, which was just, the background, nice exposition of, hey, this is what happened before. But the perspective that we see looking up at the Hotel Inferno, nice. And just because of the lines around it, it looks as if this is still presently surging out of the ground. And so I really appreciated that as well, insofar as Sliney's art. But then again, the flying scene, there's great humor in that. And I don't want to take that away from somebody else as an aspect, but the moment that Ben Reilly is ripped off of the floor, as he's holding on to this flying demon, and we see the blurred motion of the demon, we can just imagine the demon's flapping his wings, and then just that entire flying fighting scene was just really cool. And again, that blurred motion, and I realize that's probably an effect that is created via, a computer or maybe in digital art. Yeah. But it's so well done.
It's good.
And again, in contrast to the previous panels,
and he has bits of the floor stuck to his feet as well, so they come with it, which is just a lovely detail.
And they're crumbling beneath him, and it just really made it seem like these 5 or 6 pages were nonstop action. And I thought that was really cool, because sometimes a comic can read fairly slowly, especially, Rebecca, you were mentioning before, with advertisements in the floppies. And I pick up hard copies of my comics. I don't read any comics digitally.
I kind of do half and half. So
yeah. But I like I like having the book in my hand. I like engaging with the paper. I like the fact that I have a physical collection. But that's conversation for another day. But anyways, these 5 or 6 pages that precede that fighting scene in my hard copy here, there are no advertisements. So from the moment that Ben Reilly hits Jezebel to
there aren't.
Really until the end of that fighting scene, there are no advertisements, and I think that
it's placed really well, because the actual advert there is that comes right at the end of that fight is just before he suits up in the sort of the heart. Yeah. So it's actually a nice pause.
Yes. Yeah, the transition's good. And so, just as much as we can talk trash about Marvel's editing staff sometimes with a few of the points that we'll probably bring up in a few minutes, that choice, whoever laid this out, I think made a smart choice. And I just love the art of this issue, and Sliney did a great job. It played out like I was watching a movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I just looked up Sliney. He's done a lot of Spider-Man.
Oh, he has. His art suits it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a lot. He did some of Superior. He did some of Spider-Verse.
Oh, right.
He did Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
He also did Revolutionary War. Yay, go Cap Britain.
Yeah, that might have even been with Peter David back in the day, 2099.
It may have been, yeah. And then he did some Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, so he seems to have done a lot of spiders.
Yeah.
Bit of Carnage, Hobgoblin. He's in that world.
Yeah. And he, just going back, Tommy.
He's an Irish artist, so he's St. Patrick's Day recording as well.
Whoa! Yeah, hey, happy St.
Patrick's Day. How about that? Yeah, I like your surname, Sliney.
From County Tipperary, that's where my blood comes from. So.
But Tommy, you're saying with your aspect about the questionable morality and humour, I just want to point out as well. You mentioned about that thing where he's flung back onto the seat. There's another instance which I found really kind of quirky humour, is when he finally finds out that Jezebel really isn't a girl. And then he just king hits her, and just the fact that that's a little girl, it's kind of shocking, but it's okay because she's not I don't know what she is, but she's not a little girl.
He checks first.
He does. He does. So it kind of makes
the true gentleman.
A true gentleman makes it okay,
right?
Yeah. But she is slammed, and even then at the end, she's like saying, "Ow!" He goes, "That hurt," and she actually answers, "Yes." And he goes, "Good."
And he's like, "Good."
Yeah. So little bits of humour like that as well. But also, if you're talking about that other bit of that bit where he's all kitted out in the guns and all that, there's also a bit of dark humour as well. And I found that slightly not disturbing, but it's kind of it kind of shows how kind of unstable he is. It's that little red voice that he has in his head at the bottom. So the guy's giving him all the weapons. And he says, I'll come back and get you when everything's fixed. But he says, or I may just let you stay here forever, So, just something a little unsettling about him just saying, yep, I'll be just as happy to see you, rot and die here. So Peter David really does populate this issue with a little, really, really questionable humour and humour, as you're saying as well, Tommy.
I do have just speaking to Jezebel and this girl, are any of you familiar with Jezebel? Because I just looked up the character and I found a few points.
Oh, really?
Any of you know anything?
No,
about
not
her?
at all. I just took her as some sort of new character.
Okay, so I found that Jezebel is the self-name. She named herself that, but it's actually her birth name is Mephisto. She's the daughter of Mephisto and an unidentified human mother.
Oh, wow.
And so she's a demoness, and so she's essentially half human and half demon.
Okay.
And so maybe this child character, maybe she has the ability to shapeshift, or maybe she has the ability to present herself how she wishes. But I'm wondering if this is going to add a rich layer of depth to the second Ben Reilly tie-in issue, because maybe this Damnation event, and I think somebody else might bring up the secret organization, but maybe Mephisto/Jezebel here is going to play a very significant role. And if we can believe from Kate's comments several months ago that the Damnation event is going to, turn upside down the spiritual, or what's the
mystical,
the mystical. Thank you. Yeah, the mystical realms of Marvel Comics. I wonder if this Jezebel character and perhaps a battle or a conflict with Mephisto is going to be something that we see pans out and carries out in the coming year. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, huh?
Yeah, that leads into my aspect, which was the how did you pronounce it, Rebecca? Diogenes Initiative.
Diogenes, yeah.
And I
believe it. I believe that's right.
Oh, it sounds good. It sounds good.
Yeah, Diogenes, I think, is Greek.
Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, because Diogenes, I want to say he was like
he was a Greek philosopher.
A philosopher or something.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the founder of Cynic philosophy.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, cynicism, right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because I was wondering if, for sure, I didn't know anything. I didn't look up Jezebel at all. But yeah, whether this is another chess piece for Damnation, like whether she has a greater part in it, because it's all very cloak and dagger here. Like, she just mentions that she's part of an organisation. She doesn't mention anything. Ben Reilly mentions the Black Marvel. Does anyone know what that is?
Yeah, so the Diogenes Initiative has actually been set up over the past few issues. I believe it came in possibly
it'd be the ones
12.
that I've not quite read.
Yeah, it's basically what would be in volume 3 of what you guys are missing. I think it comes in about 12 or 13, but yeah, Black Marvel.
The past few issues of Scarlet Spider, is that what you
sorry. Scarlet Spider,
right.
yeah. Black Marvel was a villain that showed up for a bit that he took down, and basically they're kind of, we don't know too much about them, which is the mystery, but they seem to be creating superpowered beings. Like the bald guy you see running the joint is a guy named Slate, who was also given I believe it's like bulletproof, or just like superhuman strength from the Diogenes Initiative.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's pretty cool that Peter David seems to be actually taking the time with this event. Like Tommy said, even using now Mephisto to set up the actual next part of the run, because I'm sure this will have something to do with where the mystery was building before this event with after the event.
Yeah, right. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that's something to delve into. I just wonder, if well, as you said, Mephisto. I mean, she's got to be integral to Mephisto and this event, surely. Yeah. Yeah, right. Rebecca, for your aspect, anything that popped out for you?
Right, let me have a look. What popped out for me? I agree with everything about the humour and stuff. That was cool. I liked seeing him. I liked another little Deadpool in the Marvel world.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite so Deadpool.
Yeah, very Deadpool-y. Yeah.
I think the art is incredible, actually. Flicking through it again, not just the art, but the panel layout.
Yeah, right.
It's very dynamic. It goes from very orderly panels to very disordered ones.
Yeah.
And there's something I always love about that, me and panels.
And the bleed that Tommy was saying.
Is this the bleed? Yeah, it's always fun. Is this the first time they've been called the Midnight Suns in this run?
I think so.
Hang
on, no, Damnation.
In the dialogue, but in the advertisements.
In the advertising they've been, but in the actual dialogue, it's the first time someone's named them as Midnight Suns.
I can't remember Damnation 2.
It's the only other point I could think of. I don't think they did.
No, they didn't? Okay.
They may mention Midnight Suns in Doctor Strange 387.
Okay.
There's when well, I won't say the character. I know the other podcast is going to go into that, but they might use it there. But I think you're right. I don't know if we've seen it in Damnation 1, Damnation 2, and I missed out on that first Doctor Strange tie-in, so I'm not sure.
I don't think it was in the first Doctor, because in the first Doctor Strange tie-in, it's just Wong gathering them right at the end, and he just talks about friends, and he refers to them as like the Fist, the Knight, the this, the that.
That's right.
Well, that was Damnation 1.
Oh, Damnation 1, that's right.
Oh, yeah, that was Damnation 1. Yeah, no, Doctor Strange barely mentioned them.
No, it was all on Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Doctor Strange the first Doctor Strange one was very like this one, is it explains how Doctor Strange got to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of cool. The first...
the first official title.
And by, what's her name as well? It's Jezebel that says it, isn't it? No. She says go find the Midnight Suns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we do get them at the end. So if we are doing our loony tracker, it's one panel up there. There he is. And he's
one panel, but it's alright because Danny's not doing a weird backflip for no reason.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh, that was so stupid.
Well, Moon Knight's he's facing the other way.
Both Danny and Moon Knight are kind of crouching to punch someone that could be anyone. They could be about to punch each other, actually.
Yeah.
But
as Mr. Knight is removing an arrow from his knee, he's in perfect position. Like,
you're right.
Hey, I'm ready to strike. Look cool, but don't mind this arrow.
Yeah.
And did you notice too that the just like we mentioned last week with that derpy derp horizontal panel, that in this image here at the top of that last page, Moon Knight's crescent, I believe, is reversed.
Back to front again. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a backward C, when I believe that on the mask it should be like a crescent in the shape of the letter C.
Yeah, that's right. So, inconsistencies there, continuity. We need a continuity person. But yeah, and there's Wong there. He's got an arrow in his shoulder as well.
He does.
Yeah.
No bats though. Where's bats? So I'm looking for bats.
He's like under knee height. This is knee up.
Oh, true.
This is like groin up picture. Come on.
Finally, some realism.
He's not an Irish wolf.
Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. He's only a basset hound. I mean, and he's a ghost and everything.
I love this attention to detail. It's great.
Yeah.
Also, Wong shouldn't be there either. In Damnation 2, he had already fucked off to leave the Midnight Suns to die when this truck showed up.
Oh, yeah, that's true. There's a lot.
Right, so which I guess leads on to the point about the ending not quite matching up with the...
Very good. Yes.
Damnation 2.
And this last week, I remembered spending several minutes talking about how cool I thought Scarlet Spider was, because he had the strength to throw a cement truck into the Avengers. And, well, what happens, everybody?
He doesn't.
He doesn't.
He drives it.
Well, does that mean we get to choose which one is our reality? Because I'm picking the throwing the cement truck.
Yeah, me too.
Actually, I think Tommy almost makes a good point there. What if this is Peter David, sort of going, no, I don't want my Ben Reilly to have that sort of strength. Screw you, Kates. He drives the truck. He doesn't throw the cement truck or whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like...
He's like, nah.
Peter David's very...
The artist or the writer does have to... I think that the writers have to defend their characters for sure. So, Connor, I mean, excellent point.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the end of Damnation 2 here, and at first in that panel where we see the cement truck coming down, it's like, well, maybe Ben Reilly was driving the truck, and maybe he just hit the Avengers so hard, but because the Ghost Rider Avengers are so strong that it just forced it, just like any other car crash, it forced the cement truck up in the air. And I'm thinking, okay, whatever. Yeah. But no, you can see the motion lines in Damnation 2. This truck it's as if it was flying.
Yeah.
And then on the next page in Damnation 2, Scarlet Spider is not exiting the vehicle. No. Well, actually, wait a minute.
Unless he flung out, he jumped out of it off panel. But it's still.
I guess I never realized that he is in Damnation 2. Scarlet Spider's reveal. He is standing in front of the cement truck. I guess I just assumed that was a building.
Oh yeah, I always thought
that was a building.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
But so I guess there's. there's some mix. But Connor, I really like your point though that maybe David really is saying that, look, in the Ben Reilly through line, this is how it's going to be. So,
and actually, I mean, I do like, as you said, I do like the throwing, the cement track, but I do like him all geared up in this. I like him with the helmet on.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know, just because it makes him look a bit quirky.
Right, he looks super cool, but he looks super weird, and this is where like the Deadpool mix comes in, because if you read his dialogue here, it's all right, everyone, hurry, come on, that ain't gonna keep them down for very long, but you'll all be safe with me. And he looks like a complete lunatic.
He does,
and you can imagine this set of like very sort of mystical adjacent or mystical characters just going, what the hell?
Yeah.
We don't need dime store Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got like Elsa Bloodstone with her like keen skill with her like shotgun pistol thing, and there's this weird loser.
Is the Scarlet Spider well known in the Marvel Universe? Like, would they know him, you reckon? Or
no, I mean, I'm sure the rest of the Marvel Universe doesn't even know he's probably still in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'd guess there's a chance that some of them have heard of him. But remember he's in Vegas because he's pretending to be dead.
Yeah, as
after
well.
the clone conspiracy. So,
but Secret Empire, when he makes his appearance in Secret Empire, I want to say it's Black Widow that engages with him.
Okay.
Yes, but she's also
but
dead.
MIA, right? Yeah.
Well, she may have appeared in a comic last week.
Oh.
But yeah, mostly dead.
Maybe, right? Yeah. But again, my point though is that I think that it may be a bit ambiguous, where maybe some of the Avenger type characters know of Scarlet Spider, maybe they don't. And as Rebecca said, he's trying to live a secret life, but he's quickly, making himself known to Las Vegas and the world. So
yeah, he has to. Unfortunately, it's been all turned into demons and hellfire and stuff. So, very exciting indeed. And that's where the issue. Oh, to quote Chris from Inner Demons, and that is where the issue ends. So, look, any little notes here, guys? I put one note in only again because I know very little of the character. Maybe Connor, maybe you can answer this one. What's going on with Ben's right eye? Is that his scarring is just healing up, but it's not healing up around his eye, or what's happening there? He's got like a birthmark.
No, that's Clone Conspiracy, I believe, dealt that to him.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one nasty birthmark, right? Scarred tissue.
I don't know.
Yeah, because as a proper clone, when he was back in the Clone Saga, he did just look like Peter without the scarring there. That's, I believe,
because the earlier volumes, the one I got off the sales, he's just all scarred up, kind of like Deadpool, but he seems to be healed up here, except for the eye. So, yeah, that's right, isn't it? Like Kane was all kind of scarred as well.
Yeah, there's something that happens that heals him up a bit. So
Kane had the Jonah Hex thing going on, where half of his face looked like a zombie. I want to say.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It looks pretty messed up anyway. But I thought, okay, so that's a hang up from Clone Conspiracy. Was that? Did you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
The slot event, Dan Slot event that ran.
Oh, okay.
Alongside Amazing Spider-Man last year.
Right.
Probably.
Lovely. And someone else has got another... Tommy, I think that one's your one.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we started recording today, but just in the last 2 pages, I believe, the second to last page here, there seems to be a new, let's call it an aspect because it's into the night, but a new aspect to Scarlet Spider's Spidey sense, where he says that, whoa, Spider sense is going nuts, but it's not warning me. It feels like it's guiding me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because I always kind of felt like Peter Parker's Spider sense was a warning, but is also, cueing him in onto where he needed to be or how he needed to move. But here, Ben Reilly is either discovering that is how the Spidey sense works, or maybe it's something that is central to his character. But that is the motivation for him to change the direction of the cement truck that he's driving and then slam into the Ghost Rider Avengers. And so what's cool I thought about that is not only that, hey, here's this character that is discovering something new, just as I am discovering this character anew. I thought that was fun. But also the idea that he did not necessarily intentionally strike the Ghost Rider Avengers with the cement truck. It was more of an accident. Right. And that's where, again, we have another Deadpool tie-in where it's where Scarlet Spider is kind of this haphazard hero. But it's also showing that he's not a true hero, right? He's kind of that anti-hero. He's trying to make good. He's trying to do things that are more ethical, but
he just kind of bumbles.
Sometimes the good that he does is on accident.
Yeah.
And so, again, just another point for Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, another reason why I think he's a cool character and one that I might start picking up.
Yeah. I was just thinking about what you were saying about the spider sense there, Tommy, as well. And because I know Peter Parker, Spider-Man, uses his spider sense in various ways as well. So it's a warning system, but he actually uses it as a tracker as well. So he actually forcibly goes... Like he forcibly goes where his spider sense goes, so it leads him to trouble. So I wonder if that's what Ben Reilly is alluding to when he says it's guiding him. Is he actually, just receiving the spider sense and whenever it kind of, whenever it goes off the scale, does he kind of follow that? Because I know Spider-Man has done that in the past. I am going to pull out something really weird, and I think it was one of the Infinite comics. It was the Spider-Man and Silk team up.
I love that one.
Yeah,
and I think Spider-Fly effect.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. And I think he actually actively follows his spider sense. So it's kind of like, like Wolverine with a scent, but he's actually using his spider sense to guide him to where the trouble is. So that could be what Ben Reilly's doing here as well. But yeah, it is a very different use of the sense, Spidey sense. But yeah.
It's the only way I can see it not being a change is that I let me sense where the most dangerous place is. Although to be fair, I mean, I don't know. You've got a massive hotel from hell that's come up in the middle of Las Vegas.
Yeah,
he's got a very keen attunement to his spidey sense if he knows that where the Avenger Ghost Riders are is the most dangerous part of town. Because I'm guessing it was going to be going off all over the place.
It's going to have to be pretty damn sensitive if he can discern between Hotel Inferno and for sure.
While driving a cement truck.
Yeah, true. And the Ghost Rider Avengers looking pretty cool there as well. So I think with that, are there any more notes, Connor? Anything or no?
Yeah, I just want to say I love this cover. I love this cover a lot.
Oh yeah,
this is good.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. Like the interior arts aren't my vibe. Like the same way Damnation was last week. Like I appreciate how great it is, but it's just not particularly what I look for in my art. I always love sort of the stylized stuff more, which is why I love that cover.
Yeah, it is a really.
So we should probably say the cover is Carrie Randolph and Emilio Lopez.
Oh, very good, very good. Yes.
Which I have heard of in no books, and I should follow them.
I would love to read a Scarlet Spider run or issue with this illustration. Carrie Randolph, Emilio Lopez. I don't know how either of them contributed to this, but I would, because when I looked at this first issue. Remember, I'm kind of new to Ben Reilly. I knew that he was a clone. I had this understanding, and that he was, the same age as Peter Parker, essentially, or at least he presents himself as an adult. But this cover really depicts Scarlet Spider as more of a Miles Morales, right?
Yeah.
He's got the kind of jagged hood. He's more sinewy. He's more slight of stature. And so I looking at this issue, if I was a true newcomer, I would walk into this issue of Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, as, hey, this is a teenager.
Yeah, for sure. Totally.
And so that's one thing that I would say I disliked, that, but then when you open it up, it's this, 25, 30-year-old man that is stacked and, he's ready to fight and he's got AK-47s or whatever. But Connor, to your point, I absolutely adored this cover too. I saw it 2 months ago when the previews came out, and I'd love to see, as Rebecca mentioned, or maybe Connor, to get on some issues that Kerry Randolph or Emilio Lopez are on, because that art is just it's
they've done the
really
covers
cool.
for the past few issues of this, but sadly no
okay.
interiors.
Of Scarlet Spider.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I got to check out those trades and get on those.
Yeah, for sure, they're very good. Yeah, great. Yeah, the art, I love it as well. It's the colours are good as well. I mean, you can't go wrong with Damnation and Hell. You get a lot of reds and yellows and oranges. Really pops off the page. And you have and Rebecca, you have the fruit machine there at the front there.
Yeah, see?
The fruit
Fruit machine, or as we Aussies call it, the pokies, or as the Americans,
Merkins, the slot machine. Yeah.
So, take your pick, loonies, as to what you want to call that thing. Okay, well, how about we go to Crescent Dart ratings? Oh, look, we don't have to, like last week, and I think Tommy proposed a really good thing. It doesn't have to be Crescent Darts. What would you give this issue of Scarlet Spider, issue 15? Let's start off with Tommy.
Let's go with fruits this week, I guess. I'd say, oh boy, this is tough. As really the first Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider issue that I've properly read and purchased, I'd give it a 4 out of 5 fruits. As a Damnation tie-in though, I'd say, again, let's go with a 3 out of 5, because it didn't really give us any new information. This tie-in, outside of, say, like the Diogenes group, this tie-in didn't really do much for me to add to the Damnation storyline, unless Jezebel Mephisto ends up being a key player. So I'd say that an unbiased rating would be 3 out of 5.
Okay, very good. And how about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think 3 out of 5. Pretty solid.
Yeah.
Not best comic ever, but definitely decent, solid, and recommended.
Was it in any way influenced from being introduced to Scarlet Spider, or as well? Or?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it did a good job. I think if you read this, like not having read anything else, you would know enough about the character, and I've read barely anything else. So, like, you'd know enough about the character to have an interest in him. It pulls you in, makes you interested. The art's solid, and it has just enough of a tie-in to the event to get you interested in it. I think it's honestly, like with the Doctor Strange ones, I think it's a pretty good tie-in.
Yeah.
Because it's exactly what you want an event tie-in to do. It does just enough work that anyone who's interested in the event might now want to go and read more Scarlet Spider, which is, for the comic company, the whole point of having tie-ins. Otherwise, just shove them all in the event. So I think it does its job really well, because like we've all kind of come out of it liking him.
Yeah.
And it's not been that relevant to how tied he is in to the event we're following, even though that, of course, helps. And that's why we've opened up the issue to start with.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I think it does a good job. Maybe 3.5 even.
3.5. Okay, so we got 3.5. Connor, how about you? What did you think of issue 15?
Yeah, I definitely give it a 3. It's pretty good. It was a fun issue. I was entertained, but yeah, just sort of, I felt it was, kind of just having to tie in and set up for the next issue, which I feel was better. Just had some good moments, but just overall wasn't as strong as the issues before, which is coming from, someone who read it. But I think for having, to tie in so quickly to this event while keeping up with, everything he set up before, and while having an action scene, a great action scene as well. I think David did great. Like I said, the art wasn't totally for me, but I still think it was really strong, really fluid. So yeah, 3 out of 5, not the best comic, but for what they had to do, it was really good, and I can't wait for next issue even more now.
Okay, excellent. I actually just want to ask as well, Connor, as well. So compared to Damnation 2, which I think was a similar marking. I think you may have given it 3.25, something like that.
Yeah.
Would you say you enjoyed this as a little less than? Is that consistent? You think, or did you enjoy this more than Damnation 2? Compared to Damnation 2, how would you rate it?
Yeah, that's really tough. I think it's probably. I think I'd give this one more of an edge as a complete issue. I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It had like better pacing. I think Damnation for me was sort of a pretty good issue with great banter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, the main reason for enjoying that last issue was just because of the dynamic between all the characters. This issue I felt had more of a strong sense of pacing and action, and you know, you guys brought up some great things with the physical and verbal comedy as well, which just sort of I'd probably give the edge to this issue actually.
Okay,
which
cool.
Talking about the tie-ins again.
Yeah, exactly. And I again look, I like to throw my chips around, so to speak. So I'd give this a 4. I think I really enjoyed this, and I totally understand it may be from the fact that this is a new character that I've become recently invested in because he seems interesting, and it kind of got me hyped for this issue. Also the fact that, exactly as you say, Connor, as well, I found the storytelling for this a lot more enjoyable, and it allowed us to linger a bit more on just the one character and flesh it out a bit more than, say, Damnation 2, which seemed to be a very broad and general story. Having said that, though, what you said, Tommy, about this not really forwarding the Damnation story as a whole, I totally agree as well. But I think what it does is, and again I'll link this to Rebecca's comment, what it does is that it does what a good tie-in book should do. So it centres on the one character. It gives a bit of backing. It tells a very solid story through Peter David, good art in it, and the fact that it is a new character to me and a decent character. I'm not to say that all new characters are potentially good. This one seemed to work for me. So I'd give it a 4. 4 lemons in your basket. Or whatever. So yeah,
fruit machine.
The fruit machine. So 4 lemons. So that's jackpot. So there we go, loonies. Scarlet Spider 15, a tie-in. Just to let you know as well, I will get to that anyway with Spectacle, but all part of the Damnation event, and we're only one of 4 podcasts which are covering the whole event. So we'll give you details on where to go to next to continue following the reviews. Okay, Connor, may I ask you next phase? I guess that's it for the Scarlet Spider in this episode, and we take a little break from Damnation. We have a little time to wait until our next round, but in between then, Connor, what do we have coming up next?
We have the continuation of our classic runs. We have the Hulk magazine volume 112, Embassy of Fear, which has its Moon Knight backups, and then we have continuing on from Houston's incredibly influential run, Moon Knight volume 5, issue 3, The Bottom, part 3 of 6, To the Bone.
And
so it's good to be, as much as I'm loving Damnation, good to be back on track with regularly scheduled viewing.
Yes, exactly. And may I just add in that, I didn't actually put in the notes there as well, to do the bare bones for both of them, we are very happy to have Atalan Rising, which is the Inhumans podcast, which is also part of The Collective, which we are a part of, a podcast network. Adam and Doc will be giving us both of those bare bones. So, yep, looking forward to that, and keep your ears out for that.
Yes.
Yep, Connor, sorry. So, with the Damnation...
Yes, sorry, of course. Like we said, this is a crossover between ourselves and other podcasts, and we have, I haven't checked my podcast feed. Is the Defenders TV podcast episode already out? If not,
Yes.
they are
Oh, it
covering.
is? Oh,
yes,
excellent.
it is. So I'll dig into that after that.
Yep.
The Defenders TV podcast is covering the fantastic Doctor Strange issue 387, its respective tie-in, and then after this, the next Damnation review will be passing on the torch to Inner Demons, a Ghost Rider podcast, as they review Damnation issue 3, and keep an eye out on the Inner Demons podcast for their Johnny Blaze one-shot coming up, which is really exciting. So keep an eye on ourselves, Defenders TV podcast, Inner Demons, a Ghost Rider podcast, and Rebecca's
Yes.
Sons of the Dragon.
Sons of the Dragon.
We're
podcast.
recording next week, I imagine.
Woohoo.
The issue's next week.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca, I can't wait.
Yeah.
That issue's
I
going to
can't
be
wait. I know.
fantastic.
Oh, and let's
I'm so excited.
Oh, very, very exciting. And let's not forget, guys, as well, the Inner Demons, this will be their first review, the first venture into reviewing the Damnation event.
Yeah.
So looking forward to...
Looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So, with that as well, before we wrap up, we have a bit of, I guess, feedback, a spectacle. And what we forgot to do, because we were very well entrenched in really cool conversation last week, we forgot to have a look at the Damnation 2 review feedback from our Facebook group. So I just wanted to take a couple of steps back, and maybe we can just grab one of the comments, and just quickly go through them. So this was for Damnation 2, and we got a bit of feedback from our loonies over at Facebook, at the Into the Night Facebook group. Look, I'll go with the first one.
Find it first.
I'll go with the first one. The first one comes from Thant Tun Kyo. And it was a quick comment, and he just said, "Man-Thing looks badass AF," and so is Mr. Knight. And Thant, yep, we can't agree with you enough. I think we mentioned in the podcast last week, Man-Thing was drawn really well. I thought one of the shining characters from gosh, I can't remember the name of the gentleman, but anyway, yes, share the sentiments. Tommy, do you want to take your own?
Sure. Hey, and just to comment on the Man-Thing
Yes.
art too, is that I think it's really important that Man-Thing is being honored in that way and drawn with such detail, because as we saw newcomers to the character, Man-Thing doesn't speak.
Yes.
And he communicates with the other characters in different ways. And so I think that his drawn or his illustrated presence on the page makes that all the more important. And so I think that's a really important comment from Thant or Thant. And so I look forward to seeing a little bit more of Man-Thing.
Yeah.
Like the Damnation 2 cover, he's got really, really great detail, as he's, jumping into Mephisto's face there too.
Yeah.
So
Really good to see.
so last week I just, mentioned in regard to Damnation 2 that I felt that, Mr. Knight got the funniest lines. I didn't feel that the illustration of the character was spot on. I felt, hence the title of last week's episode, Moon Knight just derping around. But as we mentioned earlier today and last week, with the reversed crescent in one of those horizontal panels, and we saw that again in this issue, that's a little bit of a letdown just because I'm a Moon Knight fan. But I also mentioned too that Damnation 2 really had some great action, and I think that we saw some great action in Scarlet Spider today, per the panels with the movement, as we spoke about in the art from Sliney was just phenomenal in the Scarlet Spider issue. And then the last thing I just mentioned, I wonder if Moon Knight will make it into next week's Scarlet Spider, and the answer is yes.
But only just.
However, just as he is just pulling an arrow out of his left knee.
Yeah. How does it feel talking to your past self, Tommy?
Yeah, pretty wild, huh?
Rebecca, would you like to take the next one? Next couple, I guess.
Which one? Yours?
No. Oh, no. Sorry. I've got them all in the prompt sheet.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, I'm reading them from the page because I'm like pro me.
I've edited all my ones because, I just ramble, so.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And it's
Logan
what, 2 a.m. your time?
So,
Midnight for you, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I'm beginning to learn time zones finally.
Wait,
So Logan Ryan Simmons.
Sorry, it is 1 a.m. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm not quite learning them.
No, it's 12 a.m. where
Yeah.
I am, which is probably what you
Okay,
used to
I
with
know
the other Connor.
That matters, like. Right, Logan Ryan Simmons wrote, I'm not sure which line I laughed at harder, Dr. Voodoo raising his hand and telling Wong that Man-Thing can't read, or Moon Knight asking which one is the psychopath. I think we all had that issue.
Yes.
With the funny lines, and also Bats
right.
and his little Spider-Man toy, and his peeing
On
Man-Thing.
Man-Thing, yeah, that was the best one, I thought.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad ghost dog.
Yeah.
If I believed it was actual pee, I'd be even madder at him. But apparently ghost dogs do need to pee.
They do. And lick water from the toilet bowl as well.
Very important. And then Logan followed up saying, by the way, what's Blade's deal with soccer fans? But he also says the issue was near perfect in my opinion. And I agree, it was a very fun issue.
And the soccer thing.
And I'd like to
made it
say
perfect.
it's football, not soccer.
Oh,
Yes, I knew that would come up. Rightly so. Yeah.
Yeah, they've just picked two football teams with a very well-known rivalry in London.
Yes.
But
And
don't forget, world, Tommy is a Spurs fan.
Yes, for sure.
In fact, I'm watching them wallop Swansea right now. In fact, the game just ended. It's the FA Cup. I have to admit, I've been watching Tottenham while we've been recording this podcast.
That's okay.
So,
There's multitasking.
True fandom.
Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
multitasking.
And I'd like to
Come
say,
on,
as
you
a
Spurs.
Londoner,
Come on, you Spurs.
as a Londoner, I don't support either. But my sister used to live very near White Hart Lane, which is where Spurs play.
God bless them. But Rebecca, you're an Iron Fist fan, so we've still got that connection. It's
The problem is I didn't live in London. I only lived in London till I was 6, and then we moved away, and then we moved back. So any time that you make that kind of connection to a team, I wasn't in London. My dad supported Chelsea. I'll tell you that, because that's where he was from.
Yeah.
I don't really support any football team, honestly. I support...
You like the cricket,
I like watching it if it's a good game. I watch cricket.
Yeah.
Yes, I watch the proper game.
Yeah, cricket's great.
But yeah, there's a lot to be made of the Arsenal Spurs. I think what I get annoyed at is they're the only teams that ever get mentioned in popular culture is Spurs, Arsenal, and Manchester United.
You think so? I guess
Yeah,
I don't want
pretty
to
much.
waste people's time. I would respectfully disagree, but well, we can talk about that after we record. Huh?
I'd certainly say they're weighted towards those ones.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, they seem to be the most popular ones. Connor, would you like to take the next one from Mr. Hector Robertson?
Mr. Hector brings up that he liked this issue. Pretty funny. One thing, if we're going to have Blade, can't we have green sunglasses? Blade opposed to this Wesley Snipes version? This would have been cooler, but I so dig the fact his London roots were referenced.
Yeah, I like that.
I didn't realise Blade had green sunglasses till I was reading one of his first appearances last night, actually.
Yeah, it's a funky
I'm a fake
70s
nerd.
green.
Suck.
Yeah.
My sister read this and was like, I didn't know Blade was English. That led to a fun conversation.
Oh, excellent.
It was the first comic she's picked up in a long time. And it was very funny because I took her into a comic shop and said, this is what people have suggested for you, which wasn't this. And she walked around the shop and picked up Damnation 1. I literally shrieked across the shop, yes, buy it.
Excellent.
Go get issue 2 as well.
Yeah, great.
So that was kind of cool.
Get her on
She
board.
loved it. Loved it.
Awesome. And finally, Rebecca, I think I wanted to save this one for you. This was from, and this was for this issue, I might add. So thank you, Hector, Logan, Tommy, and Thant for those comments for Damnation 2. For the issue that we just reviewed now, Scarlet Spider 15, we have a comment, Rebecca, from one of your compatriots.
Yes, one of my co-hosts on the Sons of the Dragon Immortal Iron Fist podcast. In fact, one of the ones who actually set it up, because I really just kind of jumped in on something they were already doing. So it's really I consider it their podcast, they consider it our podcast. same with the Moon Knight ones, really.
Oh,
So, Connor says, wasn't the ending to Scarlet Spider literally the ending to Damnation 2? I mean, there might have been one page after of Doctor Strange Ghost Rider.
He's not wrong.
I want to... Yeah, he's not wrong. We've talked about the differences, but he's generally not wrong.
Yeah.
I want to add, I read Damnation 2, then forgot I read it, so I went to go read it again. That's how forgettable filler it was for me. And why is Iron Fist considered damned?
Yeah.
Which I think may be a better discussion for... No, I agree with him a little bit. I'm a little bit confused about why Iron Fist is been rolled in with on that basis. I'm not surprised he's part of the group who can deal with supernatural risk.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what he's done.
Is it because is he damned because he failed Kunlun by any chance? I don't know.
Not really, because even in his own run he just didn't. He just went back and sorted that out.
Were all these characters written by Bendis? Maybe
well, he was certainly damned by Bendis.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been damned by. It's another story. He was written quite well in the Last Defenders run, even if I didn't love the Last Defenders run. But in general, Bendis did not do him well. I'm not sure. I think they wanted him in. Perhaps I think his run's going to end. I mean, it looks like his run's going to end with these Damnation tie-ins.
Yeah. It's got to be back come season 2, surely, of the Netflix show. There'll be something.
I would hope.
Right.
Well, even either that or there'll be another Defenders comic. He'll be around somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not overly worried. And Ed Brisson's done an amazing run, but it looks like it's kind of coming to an end around Damnation. So maybe this was a way of giving him another few issues and tying him up. I don't know if I can't really think of a reason. Like, he wasn't brought back to life because he wasn't strictly dead when everyone thought he was dead. The only weird thing that I can think of that happened with him is the thing that we joke about a lot, the Eye of Agamotto thing. And that it's not going to get referenced in this. If it does, I will be so happy, but also really shocked, because it was in Fear itself, and there was all Danny wasn't acting as he should have been acting, so maybe it's something tying back to that. And then Doctor Strange makes this comment that Iron Fist is the Eye of Agamotto.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's never been referenced since. Never been referenced since. It's just this weird kind of, he's the Eye of Agamotto.
Yeah, sorry, Rebecca, can you, is it just that? I mean, can you explain that for maybe some listeners who don't know?
It's really hard to explain. I mean, I'll try and find something about it to write on the page, because I may not. It's been a long time since I've read it,
right.
But it's one of those. There's this weird thing where all I can remember is that he does something that's really uncharacteristic, and when they're asking Doctor Strange about it, he says Iron Fist is the Eye of Agamotto. They never go back to it.
Oh, right.
And it's one of those things that if you, I mean, look, honestly, Connor and Carl will come in and tell me exactly why I've forgotten what's going on. But let me see if I can do a quick...
because...
So apparently Agamotto has a mystical connection to Iron Fist, who he previously trapped in his dimension. And it's to do with... War Machine knocked Iron Fist out. And it's one of those weird things that we jokingly say that Marvel will never tie up.
Okay.
Because it's not been referenced since 2000 and whatever, whenever Fear itself was, and Heroic Age and that.
Yeah.
It's unlikely to ever come back, and how do you explain it anyway?
Yeah. It's one of those conveniently kind of left alone.
Yeah. But I think because he's now in an event with Doctor Strange, we've been kind of like joking with each other, like, maybe we'll find out. Yeah. But I'm with Connor. I'm not angry about it, because I think it's just one of those comics things. But I don't really think that he's damned. I don't think he's done anything particularly. I mean, I don't really know what Man Thing's done, but hey, I don't know a lot about Man Thing.
Oh yeah.
So, and I imagine there's others as well, but I look forward to seeing what happens with him. And the previews are out for the Iron Fist tie-in issues, and they look great.
They look great, don't they? You forwarded them to me, and they those pages look awesome. I can't wait for that.
It's basically they retell his origins. So if you don't know anything about Iron Fist, you're going to be done proud for knowing who Iron Fist is, and then apparently we're getting a cage match with demons.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
So Rebecca, are you one for when previews pages come out? Are you one that goes forward and takes a look at those, or are you one that typically decides, no, I'll wait for the issue to come out?
I mix and match depending on what the comic is and how much I am worried about it. I wanted to look at the Iron Fist one because, number one, I wanted to post it to the podcast page and see how spoiler it was, and number two, we're getting a new artist for Iron Fist with this issue. I wanted to have a look at that. So I've already seen some of his art because it came up in the We're Changing Artists type interviews. And so this was something different. And when I saw it was just basically a retelling of the Iron Fist origin, I was fine going all in. But there's some I definitely don't read.
Yeah.
Like I didn't read any of the Secret Empire ones. I haven't read any of the Doctor Strange ones recently.
Yeah.
Or the Damnation ones. I think there's some I can't help myself with. Like I read all the Captain America ones as well. I just get a bit, up and down. I change my mind on it all the time.
Yeah.
Do you avoid them generally? What do you guys do?
Yeah, Tommy, do you avoid them generally, or?
I typically avoid them. Just because I know that just because of my schedule during the school year is so tightly packed that when I get the chance to sit down for an hour and read some comics, I really enjoy that ritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I typically, and I really appreciate the Into the Night Facebook group, and Connor and Ray, what you do is that you make a dedicated spoiler thread where you put
I really like that as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because that's that ritual of being able to sit down and have some time to myself is they come few and far between, and so it's just the way that I read comics. And again, I collect nothing but hard comics, so.
And it depends on when you pick them up. Then, there's a bit of lag. There may be a bit of lag when it is released, and then there's that danger of actually, you don't want to be spoiled. And that's it's exactly why we do it as well. I hate doing that, especially with the movies as well. I don't want to be spoiled with movies. Pretty much just the Moon Knight ones. I veer away from the previews. With the Iron Fist one, like the one that you sent me, Rebecca, I had no problems having a look at that because I don't know, I was a little excited at looking at it.
But also I feel if I've looked at it first, and I don't feel bad sending you that one because that one specifically was something I know you already know the story of. Yeah. So it's just like, look at the art. Here's the origin of Iron Fist. But I wouldn't necessarily send it to, say, Tommy.
Yeah, right.
Who I don't know if I know somebody knows Iron Fist, and when I put it on the Iron Fist page, I was like, here, have a look at it. It's spoilery, but only if you don't know the origin of Iron Fist. Yeah. Otherwise, go look at the art. Yeah. So I wouldn't send it out randomly, but I kind of know. I have a vague knowledge of what you guys already know.
No, I know for sure. Yeah. We've had many comic book discussions. So yeah. And how about you, Connor? You generally read them, right?
Oh man. Yeah. At this point, I'm becoming one with the preview pages from day one. I can't stay away. I'm so bad, and
I know you read the Transformers ones.
Oh yeah, just as soon as they drop, I'm like, Google alerts at this point are up. I'm there.
Like catnip.
Like it's terrible. I try not to do it with movies, but I mess up there too. I'm really bad.
Well, as you can see, Loonies, each of us are very different in how we approach all of these previews. So, I think we've wrapped up. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Tommy as well. Thank you so much, Tommy, for coming onto the show again. It was very short notice.
Incredible research as always.
Incredible research. And it was just off.
Hey, my pleasure, and y'all filled it out. So and I'll always say it. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And,
tell your student that Ben Reilly now has lots of fans.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. So thank you for letting me come on.
Yeah,
again.
no worries. And I've had a lot of fun. I thought we did really well with this review, and we all had very, very good thoughts on it. So as always as well, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on board. You are one of the High Priests of Khonshu, so it's good to have the three of us together. Tommy, you would have to be like our I guess you'd have to be our Mr. Knight now. We've got the all the identities happening. How's all that?
That's quite an honor, Ray.
I was going to say, that's an honor, Mr. Knight.
Well, you've got to get that.
I fully endorse that.
Yeah.
You know.
Dress up in a white suit to work.
Sorry?
Well, I could show you a photo of or show you one of my senior prom photos that is quite embarrassing from 13 years ago or whatever it was. Like I said earlier, though, I feel like I'm just an altar boy for the Priests of Khonshu. So I'm just the lowly servant that brings you the tools. So.
No, you do great work for us, and we can't thank you enough. And it's a pleasure having being able to interact with loonies like yourself and we're all fans of Mooney. Although albeit this episode being very light on Moon Knight, it's just fun to just talk comics and talk Damnation. So thank you so much. And as always, Connor, it's great to have you as well, of course, co-host. And for loonies out there as well, you can find us on email at moonknightpodcast@gmail.com. We have a blog site, intothenightpodcast.wordpress.com, and we're on Facebook, where much of the interaction happens in our group, which is facebook.com/group/intothennight, and we have a page as well, which is kind of like a duplicate, I guess. It's facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight with a K. Also on Twitter at ITK Moon Knight. And as mentioned as well, touched upon, we are part of the collective. So other podcasts, such as the ones doing the Damnation crossover, like Defenders TV podcast, Sons of the Dragon, the Iron Fist podcast, and Inner Demons, a Ghost Rider podcast, as well as Adelan Rising, the Inhumans podcast, and a slew of others. We've all come together and, we like to share the wealth and spread the news amongst ourselves and try to get listeners out there that like what we like. So, please have a look at our webpage for the collective. There are about, I think, 13 or 14 podcasts associated with them, and they're all very good. I've got to actually give one little shout out to also Adam from I Am Your Target Demographic. It is a YouTube channel, and he's doing great work with bringing out videos every week from members of the collective. So pop over to his channel and you can actually see and hear some of the members of the collective there. Rebecca and Connor, hopefully you'll be up there soon.
Yes, I got to look at when the next one is we're recording for.
Yeah, cool. It's a lot of fun. Check it out if you can. We're also available on Instagram, Tumblr, and YouTube as well. Just search for Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. For podcasts, we're on all good podcast catches, so check us out. Excellent. Well,
yes. Thank you all for joining us, and hopefully another dynamic episode.
Yeah.
I am tired and probably sound like an idiot, but it has been a blast, and these three are fantastic as always.
It has been a blast. I think it's time to get on board that raft again and sail off into the other void. So with having said that, I'd like to say, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.